Hiya peeps, it's your girl Lady Pelvic with Pelvic Gaming, and today we're talking about The Legend of Zelda. Yeah, no subtitle, just The Legend of Zelda. The Legend of Zelda came out on the NES February 21st, 1986. I played it on my Switch. I figure I tout myself as this hardcore Legend of Zelda lover, so I should go back, play the old games, broaden my scope a bit. I've played older games before, Breath of Fire, Link's Awakening, Link to the Past, but all of these games are 90s games, and none of them are NES titles. I thought I could just waltz up in there, swinging my sword about, and I could not have been more wrong. The Legend of Zelda. Before you start, you're given a little blurb. TDLR, Zelda's captured by the evil Ganon. She split the Triforce into 8 pieces, which Link has to go get in order to defeat Ganon. Sweet. You start here. Just here, in the middle of Hyrule. Here's where you're introduced to an old guy who gives you your sword, and thus the classic line is born, "It's dangerous to go alone. Take this." And you're off. That's it. No hint where the next dungeon is, no nearby townsfolk to chat with unless you give them paper, just nothing. Off you go. Now, if you played it on the Switch for the first time like I did, you're probably like, what the heck? Back in the day when manuals were a thing, you almost had the entire map. In fact, I pulled up the PDF to see what I was missing out on, and man, this thing gives you the business. When they say knowledge is power, they weren't kidding. The manual walks the player to the first dungeon and shows where the second dungeon is in relation. It lists out all the items and what they do, the enemies you'll encounter in dungeons and in the overworld, with beautiful art to boot. Reading the manual actually kind of hyped me to replay and maybe try my hand at the second quest. But then I remembered trying to deal with a room full of wizard robes and I thought, never mind. But instead of a manual, I streamed it and pulled up a cheating map and used the chat to help me get through, because it wasn't long until I got frustrated figuring out where to go. The OG Zelda is an open world where you go where the wind takes you. No hand-holding, no help, just explore. You go through dungeons or labyrinths in the underworld by defeating enemies, unlocking doors, finding treasure, and beating the boss at the end of the dungeon. You claim the Triforce piece and you're on to the next dungeon, until you finally reach the final dungeon, which all 8 pieces of the Triforce are needed to defeat Ganon. And when you do, you have the option to go on a second quest, which pretty much mixes up the dungeon rooms and items, and then you're rewarded with a different ending. I didn't fuck with that. I beat the game once and I was done. The Legend of Zelda has pretty straightforward gameplay, it's just figuring out where to go that could be a doozy. Thankfully, the sub-menu fills itself out as you adventure through the dungeon until you find a map, or a compass which tells you where the Triforce is. There was a new gimmick I haven't seen in a Zelda game, is the magic clock, which freezes enemies, allowing easy kills on that screen. But back to exploration, in this game's defense, it does feel hella good when you're just walking around and you find something unique. Even if you can't interact with it now, knowing you can come back with new gear and items and find out your adventurer hunch was right was a pretty hype feeling. Also, almost every section of the map had secrets. It was just annoying if you only had a candle that could be used once per area and you had like 20 bushes. But you knew there was something, damn it. Even in dungeons, there were no cracks in the walls, you simply had to guess and possibly waste your bombs. Thankfully, I played it on the Switch, and being a cheesy cheapskate that I am, I abused the hell out of save states. Call me a cheater, I don't care, I wasn't about to live your childhood frustrations. But in a way, I did, because some dungeons had more locked doors than they had keys. You could actually avoid using keys by using bombs as a roundabout way. Frankly, that fucking blew my mind and pissed me off, because I had to leave in the middle of the dungeon, go buy a fucking key, and come back figuring out where I left off. Oh my god, call me spoiled by these recent Zelda games, but I could not believe it. I was shocked that a dungeon didn't provide everything that it took to conquer it. Or rather, that there were several ways to complete a dungeon. Even unique items that are found in dungeons were almost entirely optional, while others proved necessary to progress the game, and very few were needed to beat that respective dungeon's boss. Which, let's talk about how most were stupid easy, like incredibly easy. So easy that some of these bosses were just hanging out in later dungeons. I suppose I thought simply traversing the lands was difficult, so the bosses had to be even harder, right? Some were just figure out the puzzles and they were slaughtered in one hit. Others you had to give a good beatdown. It was absolutely more difficult getting to the boss, especially at full health, with the lack of enemy health drops. But you know, as much as I'm bitching, it did feel like true exploration, like a real adventure. You could go to any dungeon in any order at the risk of getting your ass handed to you. There are no cracked walls hinting where to bomb. You just wing it and hope you make it. Dungeons didn't hand you everything, or rather you should go in prepared with extra keys or meat. Secrets aren't necessarily straightforward, and as you progressed and gathered valuable treasures, you felt stronger, and it gave you a boost of probably misguided confidence to take on your next dungeon. I'm telling you, as you got stronger, so did the dungeons. I will say the level design was kinda shitty, very easy to get lost. Even if you got a map, it didn't detail what floor you were on, and many of the rooms looked the same. Even the manual encourages that you draw the map because it knows you'll get mixed up. But even so, the manual also gives you an idea of each dungeon's shape. It all goes back to the manual, I swear. One of the things I found most enjoyable about playing this game is how old some of the monsters are. I had no idea Tektites, Dodongos, even Wallmasters dated so far back. Also, seeing how Zelda has grown as a series. Fairy fountains still existed. I thought the rings started in Oracle games? Nope, they're in the original Legend of Zelda. Heart pieces weren't a thing, you simply got an entire heart container. To my surprise, your sword could already shoot beams, even if you're just starting the game. And by shooting beams, the manual actually says he's throwing his sword. Sure, Link, I don't know how that works, but sure. Plus, you actually don't get hurt by your own bombs and you can't throw them. I thought I was a Legend of Zelda connoisseur, but this game showed me otherwise. Now let's talk about graphics. I mean, it was very minimalistic. Minimalistic doesn't mean bad, it just means minimal. And let's be fair, this game came out in the 80s and technology was very limited. Link is a very distinct character, and with the narrow color palette, I think Miyamoto and the gang did pretty well. What you see is what you're pretty much gonna get. I actually thought they did great making enemies stand out in the various enemy shapes and colors, even if some later enemies were just color swaps. And lastly, the music. There is a whopping 5 songs in-game, not including the little jingles like fighting an item or playing a recorder. You quite literally have the same title theme, menu theme, overworld theme, dungeon theme, and Ganon dungeon theme. So yes, all the dungeons have the same track except for Ganon's. And you know, it's the original stuff, all chip-tuned out. Each track sounded fine, I won't tell you I was blown away or jamming. Dungeon theme sounded treacherous, and Ganon's theme did sound more deadly. The title theme, it's a classic, along with the overworld theme. It's repetitive, but streaming it, I didn't find it annoying. One touch I did really like though is as you neared the boss or a former boss enemy, you could hear the roars in the background. I mean, it literally sounded like an elephant, but I kinda liked that it was a sign that you were on the right but perilous path. So I think my favorite track out of these 5 would probably be the title theme. It's just a staple and it sets you up for adventure. You're going on a journey to save the beautiful lands of Hyrule and its princess. I rate The Legend of Zelda Archaic out of 10. Not my cup of tea. Never again. This game had little to none of the modern everyday conveniences of a traditional, modern Legend of Zelda game. I do admit, I feel I missed out on a lot of what made this game really cool aside from the innovative gameplay, was talking to your friends and talking oh, I found this secret here, oh, I found this secret, you know, that kind of sense of community. If you look at any long time running game series and see where they started and where they're at, there'd be a huge progression. It's all because they started here and after the trials and tribulations, they kind of tweaked it and made it this wonderful product here. Plus, the Legend of Zelda series has paved the way for several other dungeon crawling games. Needless to say, me and this game have a love-hate relationship, or I should say respect-hate relationship. There's not a lot of love there. While I enjoyed seeing my favorite series roots, I never want to go back. I do think a lot of people just play this game purely to speak on it or for nostalgia purposes. I can't imagine someone playing this game for fun. I mean, I'm sure they're out there, but ooh. And God bless you speedrunners out there. I don't know how you do it. That said, what did you think of my review? Am I a young whippersnapper who can't appreciate video games of old? Or did you experience it the same way I did recently? Did you grow up with it? Let me know. I'm always reading your comments. Thank you so much for watching. Top box is more reviews like this one, and the bottom box is my Let's Play channel. And if you like this video, please consider becoming a patron. Love yo faces, and I'll see you in the next video.